Hello SGD, Sacred Geometry Decoder. I'm going to add this to the 30 free list because when we look at how these ancient measure systems that we saw in the series, I'll add the long foot playlist because it all blends in together, but especially connections to geometry, geometry, earth measure, and or geodesy is another name for it. But so the Great Pyramid, to simplify it, it's 440 Egyptian raw cubits wide at the base, 280 Egyptian raw cubits high, therefore 7 to 11. Now, if you include the slight variations on each side, what you have is that this very good approximate of half pi is spot on. The slope to the half base is spot on to 5, a golden ratio, but I'll just be simplifying it to the 7 to 11 ratio because even at this, it's, the numbers are so close that it's, if you were to use them in real world, you would be splitting hairs in any structure. So on a piece of paper or mathematically, in that sense, not perfect. In any applied real world sense, as good as you're going to get. So the Louvre Pyramid by this architect I.M. Pei, who's again one of these famed rock star architects, he begrudgingly admitted the golden ratio, golden section was one of the most important things he learned, and the Louvre Pyramid. So to get, as an architect, if you can get one of your designs in front of the Louvre, you're a rock star. And again, no secret, the proportions of the Louvre Pyramid are the same as that of the Great Pyramid, and this is at the Louvre, and so therefore 7 to 11 would be the Louvre Pyramid. Now, Albrecht Dürer, Melancholia 1, one of these very enigmatic, very well studied pieces of esoteric art, which have all your important features in regards to construction and the compass, which, there's been analysis of this particular piece of art. It is overloaded with information. You've got Jacob's ladder there, scales, timekeeping, the bell, and magic square, and a lot going on there. He's a geometrician, just like all these hermeticists, alchemists, esotericians were all basically teachers of Euclid, formally or informally, and they're all into their geometry. Noticed his hand, he's doing that, giving us a little sign there. But so Melancholia 1 is 14 to 11, so it fits that right angle triangle which defines the pyramid, 14 to 11. So just like the Louvre Pyramid, I.M. Pei, the architects of the Great Pyramid proportions of 7 to 11 are just like the Pyramidion found next to the Red Pyramid, which is 1 meter high and 3 Egyptian raw cubits wide. A lot of beautiful geometry, numbers, measures, timekeeping going on there. But this will be Anish Kapoor. Earlier in this series on 33, I already did one on him and how 33 feet is used in there. Now, I.M. Pei got his designs in the front of the Louvre. What's the other big place just outside of Paris is Versailles. As a sculptor or as an architect, to get your constructions designs in here, you're a rock star. And to get them like this, with all this, the turf and the earth being buried, you got to be connected. You got to have finance to do this type of stuff. You got to have connections. That's also the Sky Mirror, which is either 33 feet or 35, depending on your source, but I would suggest 33, but let's not include that. But this particular modern artwork, I use that term loosely anyway, 33 feet high. S-curve, approximately 33 feet long by 8 feet high. I went into this in the Anish Kapoor episode and how this measure and these proportions, geometry, hidden knowledge is going on in here. And again, to get your sculpture, that's not a piece of cardboard, that's a piece of steel. And again, to get, you don't just weld this together in your backyard shed. And to move it around the world as they have been, that's big money, that's big connections. You need, yes, money and connections. So to get a sculpture like this next to a riverbed, now consider the environmental complaints that would go in. So for you to, just the money alone to do it, and then the permissions needed, again, these architect, sculptor Anish Kapoor gets his stuff moved around. And yeah, just lucky. Anyway, but Cloudgate in Chicago by Anish Kapoor, 2006, I think it was completed. It's in Millennial Park in Chicago. Connections between Chicago, the City Beautiful movement, Daniel Burnham, who was revealed to be the architect behind the redesign of Colonial Williamsburg. He was the architect behind the Macmillan plan for the redesign of the Washington Mall. City Beautiful influence on San Francisco, Indianapolis, Winnipeg, so many other places. But this is a huge piece of steel, and it was, and not a piece of steel, it was welded together. You need skilled people to do this. You don't just sort of do it in your backyard and move it around. It just happens to be 168 panels that were put together and then polished. 168, 24/7, 24 hours times 7 days, 168. It's one of these repeated themes. There's also always multiple levels, but it's 33 feet high, one Rathbone chain or half a Gunter's chain, and it's 66 feet wide, a Gunter's chain wide, which is so important. Again, Edmund Gunter, these measures were enforced during the early years of Queen Elizabeth I, Edmund Gunter, John Dee, Francis Bacon. This was a weird time where a lot of our modern standards were created, set in stone, written in law by hermeticists, alchemists, and geometricians, especially. John Dee, who's more famous for his spiritual and magic, was a professor of Euclid. Gunter was a geometrician, astronomer as well. John Dee would be more famous for that, but again, one thing that links all of these hermeticists, alchemists, esotericians is geometry, astronomy, music, and arithmetic. That's the one thing that joins them all, and it goes way back in time to the 42 books of Thoth. 42 feet deep. Isn't that interesting? So 33 feet high, that's the side view, and 42 feet deep. Orchard Hills is one of the local Mason lodges, not too far from where I live, Orchard Hills. And what do you got there? Oh, interesting. Yeah, carrying on the ancient world traditions now. So at 42 feet deep and 33 feet high, the side view creates a 14 wide, 11 high ratio. So 40, if the height is 1, 33 feet is 1, therefore that is 1.272722727 square root of phi to, again, very high approximate at least. But if you, again, just like with the pyramid, therefore the hypotenuse of that right angled triangle is 1.6185903. That's phi up until the fourth decimal place. If you were to achieve that in any scale, again in the real world, splitting hairs. So not purely in number or geometry, not a pure form, but if you're to add or take away a few hairs, you're going to get it. But 42 to 33 feet, which creates Great Pyramid, Louvre Pyramid, all these proportions going on, which is also the 14 to 11 of Melancholia 1. This, of course, is a 14 to 11 ratio as well. Which brings us to Chicago, Daniel Burnham and the City Beautiful movement. The streets, 66 feet wide, the normal streets. Now, there are wider highways, okay, but just search for it, 66 feet wide. This is a standard across Canada, Australia and America, and 66 feet wide with a 42 feet carriageway. However, some streets are 66 feet wide with a 44 foot carriageway and 11 foot sidewalk. 11 feet is 33 hands, 440 connect, 44 feet is 33 in the Ionic scale. So either one is, whether it's the 11 foot sidewalk or the 12 foot sidewalk, full of information. I didn't show these because in the ones I just recently, which included the Golden Gate Bridge, Sydney Harbour Bridge, city plans, block sizes, it's all there. So 44 feet, you can see that in there. But 66 feet wide, the entire street, 42 feet wide carriageway, not just Chicago, it's Australia, America, Canada. So the streets, which the street which my street leads off is this same thing. This is a standard. So street widths in Chicago, Sydney, Adelaide, Raleigh, everywhere 66 feet wide. You'll have a 12-foot footpath, sidewalk on either side, 144 inches, with the carriageway of 42 feet. 42. And that's going on there? Oh, okay, so 66 feet wide, cloud gate, which is the width of the streets in Chicago going back to the redesign. The arch is 12 feet or 144 inches. That's the sidewalk. So and 42 feet carriageway. That's the depth of cloud gate. So 66 feet wide, 42 feet wide carriageway in fathoms. That's 7 to 11 fathoms. 7 to 11. So just got to turn that up. What do you get? You get the profile of the Great Pyramid. And that's what's going on. Ancient measure, geometry, connection. So whether it was Pythagoreans, Platonics, the mystery schools out of Heliopolis who taught the Greeks, or the Chaldeans again who taught and passed on this knowledge to the Greeks. The Greeks just wrote it down in a form that we understand. Architects and philosophers, such as Claude Bragdon, who wrote some very interesting books as well. Mathematics is the handwriting on the human consciousness of the very spirit of life itself. Kepler, where there is matter, there is geometry. Kepler was a hermeticist of the corpus hermeticum, which was reintroduced through Medici and others. Giordano Bruno, they were followers of Hermes. And so Clement, bishop up to the 2nd century in Egypt, the followers of Thoth will still have their rituals, carrying the 42 books of Thoth through the streets of Alexandria, for instance. Pythagoras, number is a ruler of forms and ideas and the cause of gods and demons. Numbers of a highest degree of knowledge, it is knowledge itself. Plato, all of the greats, whether it was in the Renaissance, whether it's in the the last century, whether we go back to Pythagoras and Plato, Strabo and others, Herodotus point out that the Egyptians and the Chaldeans, Babylonians, Sumerians pass this knowledge on. The Pythagorean Platonic schools, let no one ignorant of geometry enter my door. This is what they all share going back in time, is astronomy, geometry, arithmetic, and music. And back to Cloudgate, so 66 feet wide, 33 feet high, the arch 12 feet, which is 144 inches or 432 grain. Now, if you go underneath, what you have is the omphalos, as it's called. Did a series on phallus, on navel stones, on these centers of measure, navels of the world. You can include Vitruvian Man, navel gazing, which was an old form of meditation, but the omphalos, which would mark this as the center, 27 feet or 108 palm, which again will link to all the other lovely Pythagorean numbers, as well as including this important 3366 scale, which leads to 792, for instance, and again 44, 66, 88. It's all very musical, whether it's Pythagorean 432 or whether it's equal temperament 440. And it's all about, it's all there, all his number. What was old has never gone away, it's still new. And these are things that you can measure, and already in this series, it's not just about one sculpture in one town or one city or one nation. This is still global, and by following certain architects, certain sculptors, the geometry and the numbers, which you cannot lose, you cannot redefine them or misinterpret them. They are measurable, they are testable. It's part of a ongoing theme, and they're pointing at the geometry. There are deeper levels of things going on here, but what you can do is follow the money, follow the sculptors, follow the architects, follow the organizations. It's still there. Cheers and have a good one.